You know, I think about us, the three of us, what we could be. I think about it all the time.
Please. It's terrible.
No, it's not. I know June. She's my friend. I care about her. How's your day going? You look pretty.
Thanks. I wore it just for you. Her father's a driver named Nick. He helped me to survive. Yes, you can, because I can't lose you.
I'm not gonna let anything happen to you.
What about you?
Your girlfriend is a badass.
Welcome to Above the Garage, a Nick and June, the Handmaid's Tale podcast.
Hi, friends. Welcome to our spoiler-free analysis of Season 2, Episode 12 of The Handmaid's Tale, which is entitled Postpartum. Let's do a round of introductions and dive in.
Hi, I'm Scarlett.
Hi, I'm Ginger.
Hi, I'm Tina.
And I'm Kate. I regret saying dive in on this one.
Oh.
Whoops.
And then the deep dive. Oh, no. R.I.P. Eden, we love you. And seriously, Sydney Sweeney is amazing. All right, so it opens with the baby in the bath adorably, and that's enjoyable until you see it's Serena washing her and wrapping her, and she says, "God bless you, my angel, my sweet Nicole," in the nursery. And she's delighted, she's glowing, and that's the first time we learn her name, her Gilead name, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And now I just thought about the fact that you said she was in a bath, which I forgot, because that means Nicole started out in a bath and then it ends with Eden in the water.
Oh.
I just thought about that. That's
but yes, water. That is, I mean, I'm sure it's intentional. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, water seems to be a theme in the show sometimes. So
it does seem to be that. Yeah. And then it fades to June pumping with her like most miserable face on. And that took me back to pumping, and it's really, I hate pumping it. And I remember that the pump made a sound that sounded like it said we pump, like over and over again in my head, and I was going insane. So that was not in the Red Center.
with my second child, I ended up exclusively pumping for 11 months, and let me tell you, it was awful. I did it. It was a full-time job.
Did it make you feel like it made me feel isolated and like a cow, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I felt like a cow. In the beginning, I overpumped because I didn't know. And I was like, I think I was spending 8 hours a day attached to that thing.
Yeah, well, breastfeeding wasn't for me. I pumped. I pumped and I had no supply.
Yeah, same. And I would eat these muffins. So this scene like really registered with me. Like I can't remember what they were made of, but they were supposed to like
Bran. It was bran.
Does it help? I was trying to remember.
I don't.
No, I know she was eating bran.
Stuff.
I can't remember the one that we made because I thought it might have. Anyway, okay, enough of that. Anyway, moving on. And it does, but it did, like the sound makes me think that I'm going to go insane. Like just the repeated sound every 2 seconds. And then Lydia's like giving her shit for dangerously giving birth in an empty house while she was out for a drive. Is that what she said?
Yeah,
Yes.
out for a drive.
What a strange excuse.
It's a Sunday drive.
Yeah.
It's that Gilead spin.
Yeah, that was a weird one though. I feel like they could have done better. I don't know. Anne Elizabeth interrupts and shows Lydia how little June has pumped. Barely an ounce from the right, 1.2 from the left. They know that there's a problem because she's not around the baby. And Lydia is giving her a bran muffin. And June says she thinks she's earned a whole cake for Lydia's. It's prideful girls don't get anything.
I did love June's voiceover when she realizes the muffins are bran and she goes, "Praise fucking be." Like,
yeah, couldn't be blueberry or something.
Yeah, it had to be a bran muffin.
Right, it's very Gilead of them.
I felt like June was disappointed in Lydia here because she made the comment to her. I forget what she said, but she basically was like calling her out. She's like, I thought
you said you'd protect this baby is basically what she said. Like,
you promised me you would take care of the baby.
Yeah, and then Lydia kind of looked guilty, but then she said,
oh, I know this. Perfect should not be the
enemy of the good.
Yeah.
You must look for the future.
Right. Saying like this isn't a battle worth fighting, basically, I guess.
Yeah, and then she called June popular because she gave birth alone and called for help. So because I guess all these now there's like I think there was 4 other couples that was requesting her to come to their house after this.
I wonder if it was the same 4 that turned Emily down.
That's what I was wondering because they said 4 with Emily, so I feel like that was a parallel. But I'm assuming she must be popular because she gave birth and then actually called for help instead of like running away.
Are they aware that she has run away also? But yeah, she doesn't have a choice, people. And then it flashes to Fred in, I guess, his new office. I don't know where this is.
Did catch something that he's talking to one of the commanders and he says he's going to be running point on like media relations or something like that.
Media
Like that's going to be
expansion.
his new job. And he did say this office is a little big and he says, well, it's for the optics. So it's probably a bit of a promotion and then also just, the Gilead bullshit.
Right.
It's media expansion, but what he's doing is he's just bragging. Like, oh, I don't need this much space, but he's showing the space because that's what Fred does.
Right.
He brags because he needs to.
And this is the only time that they really mention what happened to Nick here, and they don't explain it. So they just say he talks about some overzealous guardians, and then Nick walks in and he says, "Oh, here's the hero." And then once they leave, he says, "You handle what happened at that house with discretion. Thank you for taking care of it. The future is full of possibilities for both of us. Things are going to happen for you."
I wish they explained though, like what, because there was just so many, it all happened so quickly and then you hear nothing and then you just hear a misunderstanding and it's just.
I think we're not supposed to care about what's going on with Nick as much as we do.
Probably right. But yet, here we are.
Well, he wasn't supposed to be in the house. The house was supposed to be empty. So I'm guessing they were patrolling and he wasn't supposed to be there. So they arrested him. And while they did the whole, I don't know, paperwork, ID checkups, he had to, I'm pretty sure Fred was looking out for June. I don't know if they have cell phones. And do they have cell phones in Gilead?
I haven't seen
I don't think so. They have those walkie-talkies though.
Yeah. So, I'm guessing, he was held up somewhere and, they had to clear him out. And then Fred, I guess, went to cover face because obviously if Nick talks, Fred gets fucked. And if Fred talks, Nick gets fucked. So I'm guessing that's what they're supposed to kind of make us understand of what quote unquote happened.
I think they didn't want to spend a lot of time, just explaining it. So they didn't.
I think you're right.
It sounds plausible. It's one of those scenes where you just want more details.
Yeah, but here we are. And he tells Nick to hang the portrait up of his baby's kidnappers. So he does. And Nick looks so pissed off this whole scene. I enjoy it immensely.
I had a point. So I like how this episode opens with June and Nick both being like separately tortured with separation, not only from each other, but their child and the physical reminders of her. So like June's having to pump and Nick's got the photo. Mm-hmm. And something that really caught me when I was watching it earlier today was both of those scenes. And with June in the voiceover saying praise fucking be, and Nick says praise be. So I thought that was a really cool like similarity between those two scenes.
I happen to have frozen it on him like staring at Fred, and it's really funny. So I'm just gonna take a picture and send it to you guys later. Okay, I like that. That's a good observation. So yeah, he says praise be after Fred says inspiring, isn't it, of the kidnapper portrait. Anyway, and then Serena's looking at the 5,000 baby things that she's been knitting for however long this has been going on. And
probably years.
Yeah. She probably has more than that. Like, she has like trunks of them. And then Rita comes in and like fearfully, you can tell she's scared to tell Serena that their supply is running out. And she starts to like say why. And Serena's like, I got it. I understand. Because the baby's separated when the moms are separated from the baby. And Serena snaps at her.
It just really drives me crazy because Serena knows that it's an issue that they're running out of milk, yet she still puts her hatred and jealousy for June over the needs of this child, because she could easily bring her to the house or have her breastfeed or at least like have June be closer to Holly, but she doesn't because she doesn't want her anywhere near her. So just.
It's worse because she even saw what happened with baby Angela, with Janine's baby, which is pretty much, she got sick because she wasn't close to her mother.
Right. Like, I think that maybe there was some hope that once she was separated from June's actual body, that she might take better care of the baby. And she does, it does appear that she loves the baby, but not, again, to promote its health over her hatred of June, So it's just more of the same. Mm-hmm. And then Lydia is bringing June somewhere, and it turns out it's a church. Is this the only time we're ever in a church? An actual church of our understanding of church? Interesting to me for such religious people. Where do they worship? I wonder where the Econo people and such worship. I would wonder where the commanders do, but
for such religious people, they do a lot of things that don't actually.
Not going to church is the least of it. You're right. And then June sees the baby and starts protesting immediately and trying to get away because she can't go through all this again. How many times has she had her kid taken away from her? How many times can you?
Her reaction is so visceral when she sees, like, the first time I saw it, I couldn't understand it, and then I was like, of course, she already made amends. It's the only way. It's like, okay, I'm done. I had my time with my baby. I have to give her away. And just to think that she accepted that, it was just mind-blowing to me.
And
I don't know if we talked about this. It did say in the script, Holly's supposed to be 4 weeks old. So I guess she's been about a month separated from June at this point.
Okay, I thought that was a thing. And I know we talked about this a while ago. And I thought she was 4 or 5 weeks old, but I couldn't remember. So that makes sense then if it was in the script.
Yeah, the script says she's supposed to be 4 weeks old.
And Fred says, Nicole, this is Offred. So June hears her Gilead name for the first time. It looks like, I think she repeats, like, Nicole. And Lydia says that she looks just like her father, and the camera pans to a sad Nick. Side note, I really wish the toddlers that they picked did resemble Nick a bit more.
Same. Big, same. I love his little head jerk when she says father, like, don't react to that.
Yeah.
Poor
So
guy.
I thought it was so heartbreaking when, like, Fred introduces her as Offred, right? But then it's also sad because he calls her Nicole, which June had just named her Holly.
Holly, yeah.
So
she had her name taken away too.
I was just gonna say, so obviously, like, Nick was, like, jolted hearing her say, like, she looks just like her father, and then Fred has that look too, because everybody in the room knows. But I'm curious if do we think Lydia knows at this point that Nick is the father?
Yeah, I'm curious too. Did she say that as a dig? Why did she say that?
She seemed irritated with Fred in this scene, so I could see it being a dig, but I just get the feeling that she doesn't know yet. But I don't know.
I don't think she knows.
She got irritated afterwards, when he wasn't willing to, like, we got what we wanted, and she's trying to explain, like, it's better if June's close to the baby. Then she kind of gets irritated. So I don't know if she knows now, maybe afterwards. But
I'm curious how they know ever. Like, I'd love to find that out.
Wasn't there a note, and maybe it's in the book, isn't there a note that the aunts somewhere have on record, like, who the actual fathers are of the babies?
Yes.
And then, so that makes me wonder if maybe she does know. I don't know, though. I'm really torn.
I think she knows eventually. I don't get the sense she knows yet.
That's a good Twitter question. Everybody should come on Twitter and Instagram and Tumblr and Facebook and all of the things. And we post stuff daily. Okay, sorry, but that is a good one, and we're going to do it because I don't know. I don't know how she would know, but I also feel like she knows. To answer your question, I feel like it's a dig at Fred. I feel like she knows, but I don't know how she could. So anyway. And the baby cries, and June immediately starts leaking milk, and Fred is disgusted because he has literally 0 redeeming qualities. He says, oh, that did the trick, and starts to leave, and June begs to nurse her. And when she asks, and when Fred refuses, June looks at Lydia as a signal to help the goddamn baby that she promised to protect, and she does step up this time, and June steps back and lets Lydia step forward in front of her, and her attitude with Fred is awesome. When he dismisses her, saying, I appreciate your insight, she says, as if he's an obnoxious child that she has to manage, and I enjoyed that, like, a lot.
Yeah, so the script was what Kate said, that Fred is supposed to look disgusted when her milk lets down, and Nick is supposed to look in awe, like be in awe, but I don't think they really showed that at all with Nick.
They didn't show Nick. Yeah, I feel like Fred
for sure
always looks disgusted.
He looks grossed out.
Yeah.
I thought he liked it, so I guess I'm way off. Like, when I saw it, I was like, because he's so disgusting and creepy.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I mean,
no.
Okay.
But I didn't read it that way, but I, again, would not put it past.
I feel like, too, this is one of those scenes where, like, I know we aren't fans of Aunt Lydia, but I feel like this is kind of one of those scenes where, in her own unique, strange way, she's showing that she does care for June and these handmaids. Like, she's obviously annoyed with Fred, but she is trying, like, she's pushing for him to do the right thing and bring June to the house where she should be. The way she shows her love for people is definitely not normal, but I think this is one of those scenes where she's trying.
Maybe she just enjoys being bitchy to everyone, though. Like, I enjoy when she's
Probably.
bitchy to Serena and Fred. No, I do think she's trying to help in this case. I think that she does try to help sometimes. And I was going to say earlier, like, I've enjoyed her nuances more in recent episodes in this rewatch than I ever did the first time. I just kind of hated her. But
Yeah.
I do enjoy her. She's like, I guess she doesn't outrank Fred, but she has some power over him to wield with the attitude that she takes about the baby and such. So Lydia gives June an opening to say something like Gileadian to appease Fred, and after a long beat of looking at Nick, the actual father of that baby, she says, "May I be worthy?" So then she is walking back into her room, and when she sits in her chair, you can see she's kind of really sad about it also, but she's rubbing her face and she looks depressed, but kind of resigned to being back there. The camera then is still on her face when Serena's angrily asking Fred, "Did you let her touch my child?" And he says he promised he wouldn't, which, by the way, to all you unmarried people out there, that is not an actual answer. And I would have kept pushing. Serena says the baby needs a calm atmosphere and you're making that very difficult. And Serena says that she has no contact with the baby and she pumps in her room. And Fred sarcastically says, "Mother knows best" on the way out.
I love how she says Fred is making this difficult when it's really her.
Yeah, no, and that's what he says, though. It doesn't have to be difficult. He said it earlier. And as usual, this is where I made the note. As usual, she's not putting the baby's health first.
Of course not.
It's like the dumbest scenario to have her in the house and not breastfeeding.
And she calls her my child, not our child, because technically it's her and Fred's child.
And then we're with Emily and Aunt Lydia, and she's going to a new home. Apparently 4 couples have refused her. And Lydia insists Emily must behave. It's her last chance, or she's running out of chances. And she starts raving about Commander Lawrence and his brilliant founding of the economics of Gilead, and asks if Emily has anything to say for herself. And Emily waits a beat and then asks why such an important, brilliant man would take in such a shitty handmaid. I love Emily so much. And then Cora and her missing eye open the door, which isn't a great first sign for the house you're about to live in. But the house looks different from the other Gilead houses inside. And Cora stubs her foot on a box, actually curses, and it's just like an overall feeling of disorganization and not Gilead. And then Lawrence comes running down the stairs and stutters out a blessed be. And the look on Lydia's face as she watches these two like poorly go through the motions is absolutely priceless. I don't know if you guys noticed it. It's amazing. She's like...
And then it's funny too, because Lydia's looking around the house like horrified at the way it's decorated.
Right after she's raving about him, right?
Yep.
The books, I mean, he can have books obviously, but I think the books are supposed to be kept in the study, and the paintings are also not Gilead, approved.
Right. And you can tell that because of the way Emily is like looking around in awe, like after he leaves the room, like at everything, the books, the paintings, everything seems to be like shocking her and nearly making her cry. But first he kicks Lydia out, saying that Mrs. Lawrence isn't feeling well, and there's some more commotion, and Lawrence yells at Cora not to touch his stuff. And she seems to trip a lot. Perhaps that's why 2 eyes are preferable. I don't know.
But when he kicked Lydia out, he said "glory be." So he also used wrong terminology.
But
he doesn't care.
No, and then Cora yells right back at him, and it's just, again, clearly not your typical Gilead house.
And Emily's just like, what is happening?
Yeah, like what the fuck's going on? And she's looking around, and she seems like she's almost crying because she's seeing art again.
What she's looking at is actually a graphic novel called Mouse by Art Spiegelman. And it's the only graphic novel that has won a Pulitzer Prize back in 1992. And it's based on interviews with his father, who was a Polish Jew, and he survived Auschwitz. So it's kind of like a Nazi Germany history of his father and his mother's suicide. And it's actually a banned book now, currently. One of the many banned books.
Where?
At least in Tennessee and in a few states is banned because of the language and because there's like nudity, but this is a graphic novel. They're animals, they're cartoons. And the page that's open is actually a hanging scene.
Along with The Handmaid's Tale as well, which is banned like everywhere now.
And then Lawrence comes in and finds her looking at it and asks if she knows the penalty for reading. And she says it's a finger. And he asks if she thinks that's fair. And she's still being careful, as I would be, because who the fuck knows what's going on in this house right now. And she says it's the law. And then he simply leaves, saying it used to be a hand back in the good old days. So I think she's still totally confused as to where he stands and what's going on here and how to act. But we're back to June pumping and still struggling, by the way. June lays on the floor so she can hear Holly crying, and June's crying too, listening. When she comes downstairs to give Rita her bottle, she stops to watch Serena singing This Little Light of Mine. And when she's in the kitchen, Eden asks if it hurts to pump, and June says it just feels odd. And Eden says she can't wait. May God find her worthy. And then when June tries to leave, Eden says, God would want a child to be raised by parents who really love each other, don't you think? What if you had that chance for love and a baby? So in my opinion, Eden's asking June if she thinks Gilead's bullshit now, because she can see that it is. And she wants that validation from someone else that doesn't believe in Gilead and does believe in God.
I think this scene, it's sad because obviously June is like heartbroken right now because she can hear her baby and she hears Serena singing to her, but she can't go near her. So now she's got to deal with Eden. And so, but she's still like really kind to her. And I don't know, I guess I took Eden asking that question. Obviously she's thinking of Isaac, but I do think after seeing June and Nick and making their heart eyes at each other, like when she gets out of the ambulance, obviously Eden knows like something's going on between them. So I think that's probably why she thinks she can ask June that question.
Right. And June takes it the wrong way, thinking she's asking like kind of about Nick, and she reacts and says, you know, you don't have to worry about me. I won't be around for long. So she is acknowledging that Nick loves her, right?
That's how I read it. You know, Eden's obviously, like Ginger said, talking about Isaac, but June thinks Eden's worried about her. And that's when June says, you know, in this place, you grab love wherever you can find it. That she's telling Eden it's okay with Isaac. That's how Eden's reading it, but June's talking about Nick. So I guess that's why Eden gets the idea that she gets. But I think it's interesting because, you know, again, I think we talked about this in the past episode. It's very subtle, but you can tell what June's feelings are towards Nick.
Well, I don't know. Does June even know about her and Isaac at this point? Because I don't know if Nick would have had the time to tell her.
But she's seen them flirting in the kitchen. Like, I think after Eden responds to her, I think she gets that she's talking about something else.
Obviously, Eden suspected something between Nick and June, but I don't know if she would have suspected that the baby was actually Nick's. So maybe, I don't know, I guess when June tells her, I'll be gone soon. I don't know. I guess initially I thought she was also kind of revealing that the baby is theirs, but I guess not necessarily.
Like, I was just going to say, like, that was a line that kind of confused me. Like, you don't have to worry about me. I won't be around long. So why would Eden be worried about June? I mean, we know why. It was just, that's why I kind of like interpreted that way.
Yeah, I think she was saying that at first. And then I think Eden's response made her realize that she was talking about something else. And her answer to that was, you know, whatever it is, I think in this place, you grab love wherever you can find it. And then they tell each other sweet dreams. And it's kind of like the first genuine moment I think they've really had together.
Wouldn't that technically be breaking like the Gilead protocol of saying goodbye, like saying sweet dreams? Because obviously we're seeing that Eden is not as much of a rule follower as we thought she was, as she started out to be. So maybe that's just like another little thing showing that like she's straying from the Gilead.
Yeah, I do. I think that's a good point about the sweet dreams. I think that was both of them acknowledging Gilead is not all that it's cracked up to be, and that Eden's now understanding that for the first time, you know? And I think she knew that about June, or she got that feeling, and that's why she was thought she would be a good person to have ask this question to. And then later June's going to really regret how she responded because of how the episode ends. Okay, then it's morning and Nick comes out of his apartment and he seems concerned and he looks down at where Isaac usually is, I think, right? That's what that look was. I was trying to figure it out, and that's when I was like, oh, maybe that's where he saw them kissing, or where Isaac usually is in the morning, and he's not there and he looks concerned.
Well, maybe he was looking there because Eden's obviously not in the apartment. So maybe he's trying to see like where Isaac is, because where else would she be?
Yeah, maybe Eden has gone to be with him, which is what happened, but.
And then in the kitchen, Rita's being nice to June, and Nick comes in much faster than normal. And Rita gives June a look showing that she's leaving to give them space, even though she's being bitchy to Nick. And I don't think he takes that as well as normal.
I love that too. I love how she always tries to give them space because she knows, obviously Rita knows. So I love that she's like on their side, and she probably knows they haven't had any chance to talk to each other since the baby's been born. At least that's what I interpret. Is that what you guys have thought as well? Like, I don't think they've had like the chance to talk to each other at all.
No, I think this was the first time, and June was blatantly staring at him. Like, she wasn't even trying to hide it, which I think Rita picked up on.
I want to think that they talked in between now and then because they like had so much to kind of catch up on.
But that explains why it's so awkward though when they first approach each other. They don't really like. There's so much to say. Like,
like where do you start?
Where do you go? Yeah.
I mean, they haven't discussed Hannah. They haven't discussed, whatever happened to him, whatever happened to her in the house, giving birth. Oh my God, it's so much. Yeah. So June says she hasn't seen Eden and cracks her funny old baby joke, and she gets an actual laugh out of Nick, which is rare and amazing. And then he says, "Our baby is so beautiful." And June nods tearfully. He says, "I wish I could hold her." And she manages to barely get out, "Me too." Then they start like fantasizing together, which is literally like the most fun thing you can do in Gilead together. Well, second most. Go ahead.
I think before we move on, we should add the script note on that.
Yeah. So the line originally as written was, "The baby is so beautiful." And I really love the change. It's one word, right? The and R. Big difference. But I love the R. I think it really makes the scene that much more poignant because like they're still taking ownership. Like, no, this is our baby. Like they haven't taken that out of them yet. I think that's beautiful. That was a very good change. And also, he was supposed to say, "I want to scoop her up and kiss her little head," which, while adorable, is not, it's an adorable thought, right? But it's not very Nick. So that was also a good change to just,
I'd like to just see him trying to say that.
I can't even imagine him saying that.
It's super sweet. And I know that that's true. And he does feel that way. But I would enjoy Max trying to say that in Nick's character.
So those were two incredible changes I think that they made. They made it one word, and the other line was much more simple, but it was still just as effective and genuine. And
no, our baby is super important change to me.
Which it also ties into episode 2 when they're fighting in the Boston Globe, and he says, "I'm trying to protect you and our baby."
Yeah, that's the ownership. It's his baby too. I think I talked about this in the past episode about his fatherhood and how it's presented in the show. How he's constantly knows that this is his baby, obviously with June, but he owns it from the first moment, which I think is important to point out.
And they recognize that between them, which is also important.
And then they start fantasizing, and he says we should run away somewhere and start over like a real family. And then June fully engages in the fantasy this time. Where would we go? He says, "Out west, the coast." And I love the face June makes, and she says, "Still Gilead, Hawaii then. Maui, she's gonna love the beach." And then they start literally just like fully fantasizing about playing on the beach with their daughter. She's gonna eat the sand. What?
I really love this though, because I know I talked about this in episode 6, but this is showing like June's emotional journey this season. Because in episode 6, when she comes back home after the bleeding incident, he says even back then, like he calls them a real family and he's daydreaming about them all the time, and she tells him not to. But here he says, something similar, like we should run away together as a real family. And she instantly like plays along with him and gets like dreamy eyed and wants the same thing. So I think it's at this point, probably just because of everything they've been through, and she loves him and the baby's here. Like, I just love that she's not compartmentalizing here, and she's really letting herself dream and feel what she really feels.
Yeah, I love it too. And then I also love when she says she's going to eat the sand, and Nick's like, "Really?"
All kids do it.
She's too smart, like her mom.
Yeah. And she won't. She's too smart, like her mom, exactly. And at this point, they're super close to each other, and they're holding hands, right?
Yeah, the light too. When it cuts, there's that light coming in, shining on them again, which over and over, that's repeated in the show. Whenever they're together, there's light. But this scene in particular is just so bright when they're talking about this. It's hard to ignore. Like, this is the important part of the show.
Lighting matters. Yeah. They're doing it for a reason.
Which they're also in the same room where she told him she was pregnant, and she said it was terrible, and he said it's not. Like, I feel like this is almost a continuation of that.
I even like the vines growing in there because like Serena's greenhouse is dead, but this is a living room with lots of light, and I think that it is all not coincidental. And then so yeah, I think that they're holding hands. They're super close to each other, and June tells him she'd like to name the baby Holly after her mom. And I love when he looks in her, like they're just staring in each other's eyes, and he says, "Sounds right." And then she laughs, and she's like, "Yeah." And it's all just love pouring out of them. And then Fred walks in, that fucker, and his spell is broken.
I love though how like she says she wants to name her Holly, but she's not like assuming that's just what it's going to be. Like she actually cares about him having an opinion and wants to know like if he's okay with that. And I just think that's really sweet. I know I mentioned this in the last episode, but what I really, really love about this scene and why I will always be partial to the name Holly, I'm sorry, Margaret Atwood, but this is the one time they got to make a parenting decision together. We never see June smile like that. I mean, the only time she does that is when she's with Nick or with Holly / Nicole. So that's just why I will always be partial to that name. So
I'm with you. This scene is the reason why I can't fully get on board with Nicole.
I do also think that if Fred didn't walk in, I think that Nick was going to kiss her because he totally looked like he was going in for it.
Well, and you hear him move his hand away, which is like, I was sure they were holding hands, but I did want some confirmation, and you can hear them, their flesh parting. But it's so dumb. I love how stupid they are doing this shit.
I don't think they care anymore.
Fred's about to walk in
as much.
They separated this time. They didn't when Serena walked in, the pregnancy one.
I don't know. They're more willing to take risks now. Probably because June can still get away with things with Fred.
Well, and they fully admitted to themselves that it's worth death. It's better to have this than not. So Fred walks in, spell's broken. He says Isaac didn't show up for his post, and Nick looks at June for a bit before admitting, which was interesting to me, so that is interesting to me. Why did he look at June for like so long before?
I think Nick put two and two together, like the seriousness of the situation, because at first, Fred says guardian Isaac is not at his post, and he's like, oh, I'll take care of it. But when he says he never showed up for the shift this morning, that's when kind of Nick realized, oh shit, because Eden wasn't there this morning either. So he realized that it was more serious than what maybe he thought at first. So he kind of reacted. And I think that's why he talks. There's a lot of people bitching because he like told on Eden, but I'm pretty sure he thought it was the best course of action at the time. I'm pretty sure he didn't think it was going to end the way we see it ends.
Well, no, because in every other situation like this in this house, they try to cover for it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
They make up stories to cover so the house doesn't get in trouble. So he should think that same thing would happen if they can find Eden first and cover for her. And it's unlikely she'd get away on her own. But I don't know. I do not think this is malicious.
Not at all.
No, me either.
I don't either.
Oh, and Fred's in the nursery next and talking to Serena, like, do you know what this looks like for me? Which I found funny because his house has like an insane number of runaways like every week. Hardly registers. And the baby's crying nonstop, and Serena locks the door and she tries to nurse her with her.
Which was another scene to me where I feel like Serena is putting herself ahead of this baby's needs, because I get that like she wants to bond with her. I do think she feels bad. Also, I think it's just the fact that I'm sure Holly senses that like Serena's not her actual mother. Like, again, to me, I took this as you have no milk supply, yet you're letting the baby like naturally like want to breastfeed, and there's nothing that's going to come out. So that's not going to soothe her. So I took that as this is another scene of Serena thinking more of herself first over the baby.
Yeah, that's why she says sorry at the end, because she realizes that what she's doing is just for herself.
I don't even fault her. It's weird what she does, but I think she's just such a depressed human being at this point. I don't think she's at all considering that it's hurting the baby, because she just wants to know what it feels like, like Eden was just asking downstairs. And
no, I agree.
Whatever.
Oh, I do. Before we move on, I did think it was funny when Fred was complaining to Serena about Eden. He said that she was a married woman swept up in her own selfish lust, which is just hypocritical to me, because Fred is having an affair with June and the other handmaid and everybody else at Jezebel's, yet Eden is being selfish for having lust.
Okay, so then he finds June in the kitchen when Rita brings in the baby laundry, and she's complaining that Serena changes the baby every 10 minutes, and then Serena's like yelling at her again. So June has a chance to smell her baby from the clothes because June likes smelling her children, and I think that's really sweet. And Fred comes in angry and he's calling Eden a slut, and June says, like, genuinely, I hope she's okay. And then Fred asks, why would a girl risk so much to leave? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, don't you? And then he's like, where were you? In the house when we were there. She takes a beat and then decides to be honest. Like, in the attic. He's like, so you heard. And she says her heart was beating too loud to hear anything, which is ridiculous. But he just takes it and says, you were that frightened and you still would prefer not to come home.
He's so delusional. Like, he really doesn't get it.
I know. But it's almost like he's trying to at the moment for like half a second. Like, why do people not like me? Why is everyone running away from me?
Which is just, again, shocking that after all of this, and like even Serena just saying in the last episode that, you know, she loves the father of her baby, like he still just doesn't understand.
And then June chooses like the safest truth to tell him, which is, I just said goodbye to my one daughter and I wanted to have a little more time with my baby and my belly before, you know. I don't know if she's being nice or just safe, probably safe. Then they have this back and forth where he's like, well, how was that, by the way? And she's like, I was really surprised to see her. And he's like, I did that for you. And she said, thanks. And he's like, oh, is that all? Is that all it's worth? I liked the exchange that comes next where she looks like depressed or I don't know, whatever about what he's asking her for. And then she offers him a game of Scrabble sometime in the future, maybe like a coupon for a free Scrabble game. Says that would be fun, but I don't know all the emotions.
Well, he was definitely like wanting to resume their, yeah. And she's
I know
like,
what he was
yeah,
wanting.
that's not happening, so we'll play Scrabble.
Right. But he took it and left. That's what I was.
He's so self-involved though, because when he talked about like letting her see Hannah, well, it's what you wanted, it's what you asked for. I'm glad I made it happen for you. Like, he's some kind of hero for doing that for her.
He likes feeling like that. That's the validation that he needs to feel, I don't know, accomplished or manlier or not as emasculated. That's what he wants. Praise.
And I think in his head, he really thinks he did a good thing. Like, I know that's the thing, but he really thinks he did her a favor.
He's delusional. So yeah.
Yeah. Super
Totally.
delusional. Yeah.
100%.
So I did a good thing for you. Now you should. Ugh.
He's forgotten that he did that because he raped her. And
right.
Somehow that cracked his conscience.
Well, don't forget he was fixing Serena's mess by Hannah. So
yes.
So noble.
Anyway, he leaves and she looks a little miserable. And then we're at Emily's and Mrs. Lawrence comes in. Hello, Mrs. Lawrence. And she asks who she is. And when Emily says off Joseph, she says, no, what's your real name? And then she's like, don't tell Joseph. He doesn't like me to talk to the girls. And then tells Emily he did an awful thing. And you don't know what it is at first. And then she finally says he came up with the colonies. I told him those were real people digging up that poison. And then Joseph hears her and comes in and takes her back to her room as she screams, I hate you. You know what you did. I thought that was kind of a cool, surprising scene. And then he brings Emily downstairs and he pours her wine, which I think in a previous episode we were wondering if there was wine in Gilead, and there is, unsurprisingly, in this house. And he tells her, we value privacy in this house. And she asks if his wife is okay, and he says things didn't turn out the way she wanted. She was an art professor and she wanted everything to be beautiful. He asks about her career then and if she misses it, and she spouts some Gilead bullshit because she still doesn't know what the fuck's going on. And he calls it bullshit and runs through her impressive Gilead rap sheet and asks how that felt. And she drinks wine instead of answering. And he asks about her family and says losing a child is like losing a part of your body, but you know what that's like too.
I thought that was interesting though, because the way he said that about losing a child made it seem like he knows what that feels.
That's what I was about to ask. What do you think? Do you think he did lose a child?
I will say, I think Bradley Whitford has said somewhere, I think I read in an interview once, that in his like backstory for Lawrence that he's made up in his head, that they did have a child that they lost.
Young, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know if it's official. I know I read Bradley Whitford said that somewhere.
I was just going to say that I like that interaction, that first interaction, that, you know, this is the first time we get to see this character in this episode. And Bradley Whitford actually won an Emmy in 2019 for this episode as a guest actor. And I thought it was interesting because he's reading Emily, like you can see that he he's studying her. And obviously from that first scene, we know he's not a conventional Gilead believer. There's something else going on there, but obviously we don't know because it's just one scene. But she lies to him. He asks her, like, where are you from? And she says, here. And he gets annoyed, because he likes a challenge. He's trying to see if Emily, I guess, he chose her because of a rap sheet, like you guys said. So it was a very interesting beginning for me for that.
Yeah, and he's asking her questions that he already knows the answer to. Yeah.
Yeah, because he wants to know if she's gonna lie.
Then Rita breaks into June's room, waking her up, and she says she hasn't pumped yet. And unfortunately, Rita's there for a much worse purpose. They found Eden and they brought her back. And then we're in a locker room with Nick and Eden, and he's begging her to say anything to save herself. And she won't. She says, all I wanted was a real family that loves each other.
Which, by the way, I thought it was very interesting that he was raising his voice with her, because I believe this is the first time he ever raises his voice with Eden, correct?
What about the letters? I'm pretty sure he raises his voice when she found the letters.
Not like, he wasn't like this though. And really Nick is always very like even keeled. So the only other time we really see him get like this animated and this, I guess, angry and like raising his voice was with June in the Boston Globe. And both times when he's acting this way, he's doing it out of fear. Because in the Boston Globe, he was terrified about June like not being okay and wanting to run away. And here he's terrified because he knows that if Eden doesn't lie or like make up a story, she's gonna die.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say he's never raised his voice with her, and that just because of that one scene where he was angry with her and she was crying and it was upsetting. But
yeah, and with the letters, he at least like he was angry, but he kind of like controlled himself a little. Whereas here he's like,
yeah, he felt bad about it.
He doesn't convince her, like that's not gonna end well.
This is a sad parallel because, Nick just told June, that he wanted to run away and be a real family. And here's Eden telling him that all that she wanted was a real family.
And this is the reality of running away, right? Like, this is the reality. If you run away.
And I caught that parallel too. And I think there's another parallel too, where I guess the family idea, because I feel like you're also seeing the parallel of Serena. She wanted this baby, but she doesn't want the family. She wants just the baby. Or I guess she knows she's not going to have the family with Fred. So I guess it's interesting to see like the three different dynamics of what being a family means in this sense.
Technically, Serena and Fred are supposed to be the real family, the conservative, the traditional family, is what I should say, married and obviously with a baby that's not theirs, but in Gilead, it's their baby. The rest are not traditional families. Eden's family is supposed to be with Nick. That's, the matrimony. And June's not supposed to have a family.
But then in reality, like Fred and Serena are supposed to be the family, but there's zero love there. And then you have Nick and June and Eden and Isaac who are in love. But then you're, like you said, you're seeing the two different scenarios, like what happens when you actually do run away together versus not. I
liked that parallel. Is really good observation too, and sad. And then, all right, so he's begging her, and Nick says we can have a baby together. I'll do anything, and it's so cute and sad when she says, "I can't. I'm in love with Isaac. I'm really sorry." He's like, "No, you don't have to be sorry. I'm sorry." And they share a sweet, chaste kiss. Is that how you say chaste? Anyway, and it's the first time they've ever kissed. But she then says, let's just forgive each other then. I feel like this is another scene where you see Nick's genuine character. Like he really means it when he's telling her, like, we can make a baby together. We all know he doesn't want to do that, but he's being genuine because he wants to save this girl's life. And I'm sure he feels guilty, even though he means that. Like when she kisses him, he doesn't kiss her back at all.
I just think he was just more than willing to sacrifice, not himself, but, he was willing to like, okay, fine, I'll do anything. I'll stay with you. I'll have a life with you. I just want to save your life. So it goes to what Ginger's saying, like his character. And then we're with June in the gymnasium with, it seems like everyone, although when they zoom out later, it's not like everyone. But you hear, she looks upset, and then you hear Nick's footsteps, and she looks up and sees him, and she knows that means that he failed to convince her. And really, 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 really fucking sad. And they look devastated. And Eden and Isaac walk out. They climb the high dive. They chain the weights to their feet, and you hear Holly crying. And after they've zoomed out, and I see that like not everyone is there, like everyone in town. Why the fuck did you bring the baby?
Why would you bring a baby to a public execution? Thank you. Like,
Fred, I guarantee it was Fred, because he was like the only person that did not give a fuck about these children drowning. But still, what the fuck? Like, at first when I saw the baby, I was like, all right, every single person in town's here. There was no one to babysit. That's still fucked up. But then they zoom out and it's not. It's like a few families or whatever. And no, not okay.
you know what? Probably Serena didn't want to leave her with anybody is what it was. She's so like selfish and self-absorbed. She's like, no, 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 the baby has to come with me. And if I'm going to the public execution, the baby is coming to the public execution. I don't care. Like,
she's feeling feelings though for once that are good, but only because of what she's about to see. So yeah, maybe it's horrific. Nonetheless, there's a baby at the drowning, and the guy, I don't even know who it was, I didn't notice, but keeps asking her to renounce their sins, both of them to renounce their sins and plead for mercy. And instead of doing that, she starts reading Corinthians until they throw and June's like face falls when she starts to hear her read the Corinthians. And I'm so proud of her, even though it's so fucking sad. But I love Eden's final rebellion. And it sticks with her like love of the Bible and God. She never gives that up, you know? She just realizes that Gilead is a separate thing. That Gilead does not, it's not promoting like the good love of the Bible and God. And she realizes they're separate and she wants to go with the root of what she believes in the Bible and goodness.
And it's sad too, though, because that's the Bible verse that technically started Eden and Nick's marriage. And now it's ending it.
Yeah, but she's feeling it now, right? I mean, I think it's amazing. He was feeling it then for someone else, and now she gets it. And she's feeling it for somebody. And I'm glad that she felt that before she died.
I was kind of surprised that Isaac didn't like peace out or bail out or try to save himself, because he's an asshole. I mean, we saw how he treated Janine. I mean, that's obviously ingrained in him. He probably was brainwashed into believing that. But if you hit a woman, you know, you already think that women are like below you. So it tells me that he really did love Eden, because he went down with her. Like, he didn't try to save himself. He could have renounced his sins as well, and he didn't. So I thought it was curious.
He's redeemed in my eyes. That was shitty, but he is fully redeemed for going down with his love, his teenage love. And by the way, I don't feel like we've actually given enough credit to Sydney Sweeney, who just like
this episode
especially. She was amazing. All of it. It's just like such an uncomfortable character that it's hard to be like, oh, she's amazing, but she's so amazing. And in this episode, I love her so much. I love seeing her and stuff now.
Yeah, I didn't fully appreciate Eden or Sydney until I think this episode really brought it home with the character.
I did. Did you guys pick up on the fact though? I also saw another parallel, because when they were trying to get Eden to change her mind, Nick was mouthing, come on, like he did in the Boston Globe when June was about to leave. They're trying to like beg for her to make the right decision. And in the Boston Globe, June did make the right decision, but Eden did not this time. So it's just, well, you know what I mean?
I think she made the right decision. She just didn't make the decision he wanted.
Relatively speaking, like for her, it was the right decision. For him, it was.
And you could already see like he's racked with guilt and everything here, because like June looks at him when he walks in to sit down, and he looks at her, and then he has to look away because he can't like.
Right. It's terrible.
Well, again, like I said, and that's them up on the high dive, right? They had just 2 days ago talked about running away together. And if they had done that, that's them up there.
It's depressing. It's very depressing.
Yeah.
And there are other weights down there in the pool as they drown too. So.
And I read an interview, actually, I think it was with Max, where he talked about this scene, and he said, like, usually when they film this show, like, you know, behind the scenes, things are pretty light and they don't take a lot of, like, it's not as dark as it seems like when they're filming it. But he said this episode, like, was real emotions. Like, nobody really had to try hard to cry or look upset, because it was pretty traumatizing to film as well.
Also of note is that Serena is sobbing, you know, she's taking it the way that you're supposed to and everyone else is. And Fred looks at her and looks kind of like surprised and disgusted again that she's
well, I think
crying.
June and Serena are both realizing what's going to happen. Like, this is Holly's future. This could happen to her or if she does make the right choice of actually falling in love with someone, you know, or doing something else that she should be doing that Gilead doesn't approve of.
Right. So then we're back in the house and Nick's in the kitchen, just super depressed and doing his finger thing. And June sits next to him and puts her hand on his arm, trying to comfort him. And he gets up and leaves. And you can just tell, like, everyone's feeling like overwhelming guilt. And I do remember after I watched that episode, I briefly was like, oh no, is this gonna like ruin their relationship? And there was immediately an article or an interview or something that Max said, like, no, it's just him feeling guilt or something. I don't know. Do you have it, Tina?
I don't have that quote from him, but there was something additional in the script. So the note did say that in that moment, Nick was breaking, and if he were to have let it out, he would have lost it. So that's why he just got up and left. It wasn't anything personal. It's just he knew he was, this close.
Yeah.
But there was supposed to be a little additional scene where he went back to his apartment, but when he gets there, it's too quiet and hard. And he notices Eden's knitting needles, and she was knitting baby clothes. And so he couldn't stay there either, and he just left. So I don't know where he went. They don't say, but I thought that was
sad.
Really sad that he couldn't even be in his apartment either, because everything, was just too much.
Right. Now, even like it used to be a safe space, and then she came and it wasn't, and now she's gone and it still isn't.
And it's sad too, because I took him sitting in the kitchen as he was waiting for June. Like, why else would he? I guess I was thinking, like, was he there because he didn't want to be in the apartment, or was he kind of waiting for June, like, for comfort? And then when he saw her, realized he can't do it because he feels guilty, and like you said, Tina, like he'd break down.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was just too much.
Yeah. And then Serena's in the nursery crying, and Holly looks so beautiful asleep in the crib. But June comes in and asks, "Are you okay?" or "How are you?" And Serena says, she starts spouting the Bible, but in this case, I believe it's good. "Thus is the Lord, even the captives of the mighty shall be taken away, and the prey of the terrible be delivered. For I will contend with he who contends with you, and I will save your children." I like how she's looking at the baby and says, "For I will contend with he who contends with you," like super emphatically. And I think she's swearing to save Holly from Gilead, whatever that means to her. And then when the baby cries and June says she'll get her a bottle, Serena says no and hands her to June to nurse. And Adam Taylor's music is perfect and beautiful here. I wrote that I wish I were capable of describing it in better words, but he's just so amazing at what he writes.
And I thought it was interesting too that Serena genuinely looked happy to let June nurse her, which she wouldn't have felt before the events of today.
Right. She's being a better mom now, and she's putting the baby's health above her hatred for June and love of anything else. She's putting the baby's health first, and I like that.
I noticed the music when the episode opened and Serena was in the nursery alone with Nicole or Holly. Like the music seemed like it was kind of sweet, but then it had that sinister musical tones to it. But then this song that played at the end here was more like there wasn't that sinister tone, which I think is kind of showing that Serena she's been affected now and she's changed, and she is, like you said, putting Holly first over her own needs. So I thought that was interesting.
Okay, so I think that's a wrap on our spoiler-free analysis of season 2, episode 12 of The Handmaid's Tale. Come back on Wednesday for our deep dive into the same episode. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
You know, I think about us, the three of us, what we could be. I think about it all the time.
Please. It's terrible.
No, it's not. I know June. She's my friend. I care about her. How's your day going? You look pretty.
Thanks. I wore it just for you. Her father's a driver named Nick. He helped me to survive. Yes, you can, because I can't lose you.
I'm not gonna let anything happen to you.
What about you?
Your girlfriend is a badass.